Welcome to Probate Weekly. I'm your host, Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media. And today we interview weekly typical attorneys, vendors, estate planners, and top professional real estate agents in the space to learn how we can be better at serving our clients and working with the vendors. Really excited today to have from the what's Arizona's known for, what's the nickname for the state? I forget now.
Grand Canyon State.
The Grand Canyon, of course, the Grand Canyon State of Arizona. Sammy DeStefano. Sammy, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, Bill, you're like a celebrity in my eyes, so it's really fun to be on your show.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much. And so you're a real estate agent based in the Phoenix area, Scottsdale area?
Phoenix and Scottsdale mainly, but really our probate business covers all of Maricopa County and Pinal County.
So what has that brought you to working in the probate space?
I think that it's underserved. I think most agents, realtors I talk to, if you ever mention listing a property, they'll never stop calling you. They are interested in selling properties. However, just the ones I work closely with, once they found out really what it took to go through the probate process, and they have to contact attorneys, and there's a few different forms in Arizona actually that are needed when you're selling a probate property. And checks and money is usually delayed when you get paid. I don't think many of them are interested in getting involved in it. So
I think it's one of those things that it sounds easy,
yeah,
but it's not, right? I get asked a lot from real estate agents, well, what's the easiest way to build my probate business? I say, I have no idea, because it is freaking hard, man. I work every day at it. Now I work a certain number of hours and I work, in a controlled, productive environment. But I think that's, to me, the attractive part is because if it's hard for me, it's hard for the competition. If I got over the obstacle, they're behind me, they still haven't got over it, right? So so let's talk about what are some of the things that would appear to some real estate agents as problems that you work through as part of your business being a probate real estate agent?
So much of the delay I see when working with personal representatives, or even attorneys have shared that this is an issue that they run into as well, is kind of it's not my job syndrome. So many times the personal representative, in my experience, has so much put on their plate. And for you as the realtor to put something else on top of what the attorney's already given them to do, it's simply not going to happen.
Right.
So if you tell them, clean out the house or change the locks, post no trespassing signs, things like this, they're going to add it to the list. I think they're going to have good intention to do it. They just simply don't have enough time in the day. So we just simply take care of it. Without a thought. So before you know it, the property's ready to go. They're always surprised. The attorneys, I think that's a big reason why the attorneys will work with me, is if they mention something needs to get done, it's probably going to be done by the end of that day. It needs to get done. So
you cover a few things there. One is what I call realtor time versus attorney time, right? Attorneys are like people that you call them on a Monday, my experience, and they'll call you back the next Monday and say, hey, Bill, it's Joe returning your phone call. I'm like, Joe, who is that? And it was because a week ago I left him a message, and in their world, that's acceptable. In our world, wow, what happened? You didn't call me back the same day or within an hour. Whereas realtor time, we're probably going to text you within 5 or 10 minutes if we can't get a hold of you. And we're going to call back that day almost every single time. Yeah. So some realtors get frustrated by that, but I think our job is to kind of accept that that's how attorneys are, and even consumers to some degree. And our job is to figure out how to work with those people in that format.
Yeah. I love the attorneys too. You ask why I do probate. The reason I tell the attorneys this, and they seem to love it too, is I like dealing with attorneys. They're not scary to me. They're business people. And in my average day of real estate, sometimes they're the only business people I'm going to talk with, because my clients are usually very emotional, and they should be. They're going through a lot of this loss, and so there's a lot of counseling and kind of patience needed when they're talking with them. Mm-hmm. And then realtors, in my experience, they talk a lot and they don't say much. And so I think if we were billing per hour, like if I made $500 an hour, I would cut out all of the fluff. And that's what the attorneys do with me. And I think they like me because I reciprocate it.
Right. And I think that on the flip side, as a real estate agent, I make maybe on a listing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on listing the property, but I don't get paid per hour, so I can spend more time building the relationship with the customer to use up that time that I made. They look at that, oh, you made $20,000 and all you did was sell the property. Well, yeah, but I also talk to the customer for hours and hours that you don't. And you add it all together. And I think I think myself as an attorney, I'm not, but in terms of my hours, I try to bill myself out. The number that I use for the reason is $400 an hour. And that, is this $400 an hour work? Now that means though, I can talk to a customer or a referral source as long as they need me to. That's part of my job.
Sure.
As opposed to attorney, just look at it that way. Their job is just do the legal work.
Right. The other thing is too on the topic is most people. I don't think I learned this until I was doing a high level of business. Was most people don't seem to understand that sometimes you have to spend $5,000 to make 10.
Right.
Like realtors like myself. I mean, let me fall on the sword. When I first got in the business, I didn't have any money to spend, and the National Association of Realtors says 98% of us are selling 4 houses, 5 houses a year. That means I'm only working every other month. I don't have a lot of money to spend. And
right.
So, if I have to spend $2,000 to change the locks on an entire home, I'm kind of asking, well, when's my commission going to come in? Because, I'll do it then. Well, it's not needed then. It's needed in the beginning. And so, I don't know. You get to the point where you count it all as part of the job. You don't ask any questions and you just do it. And you just, let's stop being surprised by things that are our job. So.
I think that the other thing I use to distinguish between a wannabe probate specialist and an actual probate specialist is the wannabe complains about all the things they have to do. I have to change the locks. I have to put the signs up. I have to put no trespassing signs. I have to do this. Versus a real probate specialist brags about. I had one deal where I had to evict the people. There were rats. There were termites.
That's right.
There were guns. There were guns.
It's a war story.
Piled up. Yeah, but you're bragging about it, right?
Yeah. And we still closed on time, right? And that's
yeah. I had one time where I advanced that customer like $18,000 in various expenses, and I was like 5 different vendors. And but if you're in the business to handle it, I have a line of credit I use just for business expenses on this kind of stuff. Because I found that if I had to write the check from my operating account, I was hesitant. But if I just said I'm going to just I have one credit card just for advances on customer listings. Then you pay interest on it, but that's just part of the business. I just figured out I'll just write the check. I say write the check. I'll just charge the expense.
Yeah. Without
giving thought, because if it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do. And if I'm paying some interest on it, I make money on commissions. It's just part of the expense.
It's a business.
So talk about.
Have you ever had? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, for sure.
You work with a lot of attorneys. I've been having more and more attorneys when I first meet them, and it's a valid question. They asked me, what makes you a probate specialist? They said, I'm seeing all these realtors that are coming out as probate specialists.
Yes.
What does this mean? And you just covered it, right? It's someone that doesn't whine about the things I had to change the locks, but they actually take pride in it. If they're whining about it, it just tells me that they're still new to it because it's surprising. It's not surprising to us. We have to do it every time almost. Right. But the one step underneath whining about it is not even knowing you have to do it. So many agents that I speak with, and it was like this when I got in. I was like, wait, so we have to change the locks. And the attorney goes, yes. I said, should I just ask the client to pay for it, or do you pay for it? And they say, no, you pay for it. I was like, well, why do I pay for it? It's not part of, when we're taught to be a realtor, it's not part of what they teach us. But the home can't sell without it. And so, and it can't be secure. And so we start to learn this is part of the job of being a probate, if you're going to work in probate.
Well, I think you could make a case that the customer should pay for it, or the attorney could advance it, or you. Sure. But wherever it is, that there's a process, and that the process might be, I like a customized process, because sometimes the attorneys won't advance the money, makes them feel like they're doing something. Sometimes the customer has the money and they feel like they're in control and they want the keys, but I think the main thing is what's the customer need and giving it to them. That to me is always the true North Star. And so go back to your question, what makes an expert? I hesitated when I use that term. I will say that I used to go to court every day in LA County. Mm-hmm. And in LA County, because we have 9 different courtrooms that run all day long on probate versus other counties which have a smaller size. All of LA, which is the largest county in America, has the largest probate business in America. Maybe the city of Atlanta has as many, but they have multiple counties, whereas we have one county in all LA County. And California has more court-confirmed sales. So I used to go every day and see at least on average one court-confirmed sale a day, if not two. Within my first year, I had seen over 200 court-confirmed sales. That was more than any judge had seen. That was more than any attorney had seen, more than any realtor had done. And I had a spreadsheet of every single court-confirmed sale. I still have it going backwards for 6 years. So I can say a question on that topic. I am the expert. Nobody has that database.
Yeah.
Nobody has what percentage of court sales are approved, denied, continued, who the attorneys have done them, who haven't done them. And so to be specific, so for example, I had a client who, there's two owners of a property. There's a probate estate and there's a trust estate. My client happens to have the trust estate. And they're arguing over who gets to decide who sells the house. Yeah. And the other party has an agent says they're an expert, and they submitted a proposed listing agreement. Well, the listing agreement only had one of the two parties. Well, that's a mistake. They didn't have in there checking that they were a conservatorship. That was a mistake. In California, we have a form and you're supposed to fill it out. But not having both parties, to me, was just showing on the contract isn't valid. Just because you sign it from one party, all parties who are in the transaction have to sign the listing for it to be valid. And so I commented to the attorney, I said, well, they say they're an expert. Meanwhile, don't they know who owns the property and the proper format for the listing agreement? And so to me, expertise is not getting a certificate, and it's not learning how to get business, which is important to do.
Right.
But it's learning what does the customer need in order to get what they want and to know the process and procedures. I'm not an attorney, but I know the business side of probate real estate. And that's the part that I specialize in and try to bring to that. And that's why I do this podcast, because I learn something every day. In fact,
sure.
You said something that I've never heard before, just because it's important to me. Do you have in California, we have our standard listing agreement, standard purchase agreement, and then we have a probate listing agreement, and we have a probate purchase addendum that get attached. Sure. To my knowledge, no other state has those. Do you have as part of your official?
We don't have that. No, we don't have that. We just in Arizona's eyes, they do want us to continue to use their AAR form for listing property. Mm-hmm. But there are addendums and then specific ways, kind of like what you touched on, specific ways that attorneys want things titled. So I think the thing that I maybe bring to the table, and I've been lucky enough to make some really great attorney relationships where they send me their clients because they know it's going to get done the first time, is so many times the attorney has to go over the paperwork that the real estate agent did and change everything. And sometimes that happens a week before close. And so the title companies and the attorneys are taking all of this time to fix everything that should have been done the right way the first time. It just delays close and it wastes the attorney's time.
The other answer to your question, what makes you a probate expert? I always ask agents when I'm coaching them, of course, in California, we have a standard probate listing addendum and a standard probate purchase addendum. Yeah. Have you read those forms? Like, it pretty much, if you really read the form and knew it, it pretty much explains the whole process. Like 90% of questions when a buyer's agent, and I typically don't, well, I very rarely represent buyers at all, particularly on probate cases, because I want to get the best price possible for my client. And so I work with buyer's agents all the time, all over California, and they'll ask me questions, and I often want to just say, have you read the purchase agreement addendum? It's in there. Like, why are you asking me this? I don't. I mean, I'm a nice guy, and my job is to be pleasant to the other agents as much as possible. But 9% of the questions they ask are in the form, and meanwhile, they're writing an offer for $1 million property, and they haven't read the form. It's just, to me, that amazes me. So to answer your question, part of it is just the fundamentals. I just do this work every day and try to pay attention and learn along the way.
Yeah. There's something that's been bugging me for about 2 weeks now. There was this client, Eileen, that she lived in Nevada, and she listed a property out here that she inherited. She was the personal representative on. It was worth about $1 million, maybe $1.05 million. And I think the thing that I've learned over doing this over the years is a lot of these personal representatives simply don't live here. And when you look at a state like Nevada and Arizona, you say, oh, they're right next to each other. What can be different? So much, right? And LA is. I don't understand LA's market. If I studied it, I'd probably just call you for it. But there's all these nuances. And so for, to jump to the end of the story, Eileen somehow contacted me because she saw that I did a lot of probate work online. She had hired the neighborhood expert of this small neighborhood of 300 houses to list the home. And it was sitting. And she shared with me, she goes, we did go under contract. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I told my agent, they understood it was a probate and everything else. And we didn't know we were going to be getting this home. So it's all gravy to us. So she started calling investors because we weren't getting an offer, and we got an offer. And I said, what was the offer? And mind you, like, the first thing that's important to do when selling real estate in a weird market like we're in is just to look at the average days it takes in that neighborhood to sell a home, right? And so she was in a 95 days on average neighborhood. It was day 39, and she felt like, because in her market in Nevada, it was moving really fast. 2 weeks, a home should be sold. So she thought she was behind the 8 ball. She actually wasn't even up to the 8 ball yet, because that wasn't shared with her through her agent. She took an offer for $720 from an investor, and the agent simply just called investors and said, hey, this is a probate deal. It's all gravy to them. They'll pretty much take whatever. I said, you just took $720? I said, do you know what that's going to do to the neighbors? Not that she cared, but I said, with your eyes closed and one hand tied behind your back, you could have sold it for $900. Yeah. And it's just, so I think keeping a lot of this private too. When we're hired by clients, you don't advertise to investors what the situation is. Let's say she was past 95 days in that area, but to take a 720, I watched that listing. I watched that property close, and they listed it the next day for about 900, and they went, of course, within a week. And so it was just a wholesale, Yeah. But that investor made all of her equity that she was supposed to make. Horrible. I mean, I don't hate investors. I don't even hate wholesalers, but to not know what you're going into, I see that over and over. That's what made me get into probate. It's just, there's a lot of lost money.
Well, the hard part for me, I would say the hard part, the challenge I see agents having is every listing gets offers from these wholesalers now that look like real deals.
Yeah.
And they've gotten more and more sophisticated, I think, in their deception. And, you get this offer and it looks complete, and you have to really know what to look for. And I've been around a while, so if I haven't heard of you and you claim to have done all that business, probably something's wrong.
Yeah.
That's always my first clue. And I go into the MLS and check. I go on the Department of Real Estate and check the license status and who the entities are and such, and find these things out. But newer agents I work with all the time find themselves tied up with a wholesaler, and they don't know, well, you got to push them out fast because they're just going to type your property. It's just going to look bad for you. It's just going to cause problems. It's going to cause your seller to be frustrated or upset. Yeah. And so that's part of it is, those are fundamentals of selling property, regardless of a probate or not. And that's why I don't, when somebody says to me, I had a client that, I'll never forget, it was a friend of mine who's a realtor in another area. He said, hey, would you list this property for my client? And I talked to the client. They wanted to sell for like 1.1 in a condo, which is easy to comp. It was worth about $890. I called them back and said, look, it's way overpriced. What do you want me to do? If it was my client, if it was my prospect, I would just say they're not motivated and move on. Well, would you just list it for them anyhow as a favor to me? Yeah, sure. It's not a big deal. I don't really use my marketing stats as a marketing piece. If it serves the customer, makes them happy. So we're on the market for like 2 weeks, and the client's calling me saying, hey, I got approached by another realtor who has a special list of buyers who want to pay more. And I said, well, think about that for a second. Who would be on your special list if you're paying, if you're not getting a great deal? People call me all the time. Hey, do you have any great deals? No, right. It's on the MLS because I don't want to get you a great deal. I want to get the top price. Not only do I want the right price for my customer, I want the idiot who's going to overpay. And my job is to tie them down and make them close. And they're in pain 6 months later because I got such a great price myself. That's my job. That's why people hire me. Yeah. And to think I'm going to give you a good deal as an investor, no, of course that's not what I'm going to do. That's why I'm a listing agent. And this is so funny because when the client was upset at some point, and she said, well, we want to list with them. I said, fine, great. I'm glad to cancel for you. No problem. They sold it for $890 to some other agent. And so that magic list of buyers, and I think sometimes attorneys get seduced by that also. Oh, I got a phone call from this guy in the neighborhood. He specializes in the neighborhood. Well, he specializes because he gets them off market at a cheap price, and your client's going to lose money. That's what's special.
Yeah. Yeah. He's remodeled every house up the road because he's taken them all.
Good for him. I mean, he might be a great remodeler and make great product and sell it, but his profit is all on the intake. It's all on the buy side.
Yeah.
Every developer I've ever met will tell you they always make the money to buy the house. The selling it is just what they have to do to cash out their situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
the
side of the business I don't care for as much, but I think investors have a specific spot. I think wholesalers have a specific spot, but
what is that, by the way?
When you're getting offers at 70 to 80% of value, I also help people in pre-foreclosure. And so if it's between getting 75% of what your home is worth or giving it to the bank in a week, I think it's a very small niche. That's where you need the cash investor that'll close in 4 days. But when someone just lets it leak that it's a probate listing and they need this money for medical bills back home, or they want to buy a nice car and they just want to sell it fast, I mean, you're giving away hundreds of thousands of equity sometimes just by letting the cat out of the bag that was the seller's situation. It doesn't make you a great agent that you sold it quickly. Is you disclose things you shouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just pass on. One of the things I do is I work with a company. We have a fund where when people come to me in probate, they're facing foreclosure. Maybe it's reverse mortgage that they waited too long on, or a regular mortgage, and there is equity. If they file with our attorney or one they know and use our service, we'll advance them the money to pay off the mortgage. We'll give them the arrears, or just pay off. If it's reverse, you have to pay off the mortgage. But we have a fund to do that. Obviously, there's equity that we're protecting. We have a position that we get. Sure. But that's the kind of thing where it goes a little bit above and beyond just selling the house. I can say to the attorney, well, I can make sure it doesn't foreclose. We can just advance the money. And
service. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we charge for it, but that's what the customer wants because they want to save the equity. They want to save $500,000. So let me go back to your question, turn back on you. What do you think makes an agent a probate expert? What do they need to do to achieve that? Or what are the activities that will help them? Obviously experience, but you don't want to be the first person or the second person. So what activities have you done or did you see other people do that help expedite the process of becoming an expert?
Yeah, I think every great answer is actually a lot simpler than everyone thinks it is. Like we all overcomplicate this process in real estate because we think what we do is really important. It might be important, but it's very simple. So I guess I'll give you the answers attorneys have given me. Is attorneys, there's been so many times where I'm referred to a case where the personal representative lets the current agent go and I step in to finish the sale. And I mean, so many agents are looking at a home that maybe wasn't maintained over time and saying, well, in order to sell it, you need to remodel it and you're going to need 40 or 50,000 into it.
Yeah.
Our job was, I could have gone into interior design. I'm sure I love it, but our job we're not hired by an attorney or a personal representative for interior design tips, right? You're able to sell a home that doesn't even have a roof.
Yes.
Right. And so if I was hired to sell the house and the estate has no money to fix a roof or remodel or put a new AC on, my job is to sell the home. And it's also to set the expectation of what is a home with no AC, working AC worth in this neighborhood? Because it's not worth $500,000 if that's what the neighbor just got for a fully remodeled. But if I set the expectation and I say, this is how much you're going to walk away with, you won't have to put a single dollar in because that's what you're telling me you don't want to do. And they agree to that. I think that's what a professional is. So it's like I've purchased some homes that were brought to me by personal representatives because they said, I don't want to put a single dollar in. I also don't want to be on the market for even 3 months. I need the money now and I'm ready to call cash investors. Yeah. So I say, well, they're going to be here, 70, 75% of your home value is kind of where cash investors live. I'll give you 85, 90, Wow. And it very rarely goes that way because you have to be in a desperate situation to take that offer, but I'll offer it. And then the other thing is, if you want to remodel the home, I know contractors that'll remodel it and wait until you close the home to get paid. And so it didn't take any upfront money, but it's going to take 2 or 3 months extra. And so just to have
Plus,
more tools in the tool belt, so that you can help different situations.
plus that remodeler who advanced the money is going to charge you to cover the cost of the money.
Absolutely.
And in my experience, a little more. So you're going to pay a premium for that work.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a company in the probate space in Southern California that specializes in really what I would call like value add sales, which, obviously in some cases, like if the property is set up right for value add, that's a different animal, right? Sometimes here in LA, if you can add an ADU and you have to be properly situated, you can maybe make a profit adding an ADU or maybe but generally you're not going to get a return on your money beyond the money you spend if you also count the time value and the maintenance of the property. And so when I work out with the customers, well, let's look at those numbers. Here's where you are today, and here's you'll be 90 days from now, and you're going to have to oversee the contract, and here's the money he's going to charge you. Oh, and that $500,000 equity, you're not getting any return at 8%, let's say. And you work all that out, the number doesn't make sense. In fact, there's a great tool I use called Remodeling Magazine online. It got off the Housing Wire, where I actually take various jobs and show there's nothing you can do to get 100% of your money back.
Right.
Because people who remodel a house typically live there for 5 years or so, enjoy the remodeling, and then sell and get back a nice chunk of what they spent, but they don't get it all back because they lived in it for a period of time.
Yeah.
So that's one of those, I agree to 100%. There's not much other than making a house safe to show and available to show. I tell them there's nothing you're going to get.
Yeah.
There's nothing you're going to get profit on, I don't think, at least in my experience, but there are people specialize in that. And I think you hit on the head. It's a way to make the customer think we're more important than we are, because I'm going to help you by repainting. I'm going to help you by, it doesn't really sell the house, I don't think.
Yeah. And I give them the option many times, so many times when you sell a house, you give a credit. You've seen credits for a roof. If a roof is leaking and it needs replacement, a lot of times you'll give a credit to replace the roof. Mm-hmm. But if you check in 2 or 3, 4 years, that homeowner, they patched it and they never replaced it. And so I think many times people just want the option. And so I show them what is the option. It's going to cost 3 months. We're going to have to chase down contractors and make sure they're working. Many times I just put up cameras in the house and I'll give the access link to the attorney and the personal representative, especially out-of-state PRs, so that they can see everything done to the property. They could see when I come and when I go, makes them comfortable. But on the other end, we have a team of people. Why wouldn't you have a team of people? Because we've had to hire hazmat before. We've had to hire cleaning and moving and appraisal services. Why would I not keep those personal relationships if they did a good job? And so it's more than just Googling who is a 5-star moving company in the area. It's connecting you with the owner of the one I've had a good experience in. So,
which is harder to find than you would think. I think sometimes people assume, like I'm in LA where we have it's like Phoenix, right? Phoenix versus Scottsdale versus Mesa. You sell in all of those places, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the same guy is not going to go to all those locations because they all have their business limitations.
Correct.
It's harder than people understand to have good vendors that can service all those areas. And you're lucky if you have a few of those covered, I think, in some cases.
Yeah.
That's an interesting issue as far as the extra work that you do for the customer sometimes. I think they, I don't oversell what I do. I do want to sell what I do really well, but make sure the customer gets the best possible result for it. You talked about, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Oh, hazmat. That's a whole world.
That's a whole world. But I'm talking to these attorneys because, I think most of my probate business to me, it's because I do call personal representatives when they open up files with the courthouse. We go down and get their information. Many times they don't even have an attorney. And so I'm just connecting them with good attorneys. But many times the attorneys, when we get business directly from them, we sit on the phone and we just talk about how we never have the same job. Our job is never boring because every single day it's new. And so like probate is when you inherit a property. So the ugly side is sometimes there was someone who passed away in that property 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago and no one knew. So hazmat's the service that will come and clean up.
Some will, some won't.
Like in the crime shows, when you watch a crime show, it's the same thing. But I do think this is really interesting is when you're looking at probate, nobody knows what probate actually is. They don't know what it takes. They say, oh, well, if you inherited a house, I'm a realtor, I could sell that house. Yeah. Absolutely. But are you willing to go through everything that's needed to get it to the finish line? Right. And if I've measured it, I think it's probably maybe 4 to 6 times harder than the time that the neighbor up the road hires me to just sell their house because they're moving. Right. It's just more work. So
well, it's more of certain types of work and it's not other types, right? It's like what I often don't have to do for me at this stage of my career is I don't have to go to the beauty pageant where they interview 6 realtors and the realtors show up and have balloons, or they have some sort of fancy video thing that shows what my listing. To be honest, none of that sells the house, and they're all caught up in this whole thing. And frankly, I say, listen, if you like me to sell, great. If you don't, I understand. I'm busy. Love to help you. But if not, no hard feelings, or call me if you have questions along the way, because the realtors who spend a lot of time, what kind of cookies you put in the oven for your open houses, nothing wrong with it. It doesn't really sell the house. They're trying to sell the customer on how good they are at selling the house. They're not really selling the house. My job is to sell the house.
Well, that goes back to the beginning of our call when I said I actually prefer to work with attorneys over realtors. It's just very few realtors act like how I act. I feel like there's realtors and then there's business people. And when you talk to a realtor like me in my first year in the business, I didn't know how to analyze a property and, invest in a property. I knew granite looked a little nicer than linoleum, but it's just like at the end of the day, it's different. To analyze a P&L statement and put out a pro forma and speak with an attorney is so different than what they taught us in real estate school. Because they did teach us what cookies to bake during the open house, right? That's all we knew.
Yes.
You get into this.
Yes.
Different.
How many balloons? How many open house signs to put? Where to put the open house signs? I don't even do that anymore. I have other agents.
So it's not their fault. It's how they were taught. It's how I was taught, right? But we slowly learn.
But to tell your customer that's going to make the difference on the price they get is just nonsense, right? You can put out 5 open house signs or 50. Now, the 45 extra may get you more attention from prospective new customers. That's a different question.
Sure.
It's not going to sell that house for any more. That's the distinction.
Right.
And I think that's the part that I try to focus in on, is what's really going to help the customer get the house sold. So interesting. So let me ask you this. One of the growing piece, really become the dominant piece of real estate in my world in probate, are properties where somebody's living in it. And whereas 3-4 years ago, I was working with eviction attorneys getting evicted, at least in LA, in some cases, it's so long and cumbersome that more often now we're just selling it as is, taking the hit to an investor who's going to take over that process. What's that like in your market? Are you able to get squatters, and let's say you have the heir, the brother who doesn't want to give up the house, can't get them out, or are you able to still work with them and get them removed?
How I would answer that, my first few years in the business has changed so much to now. That's another thing as a realtor, we're not taught that. So I think I'll say this: back in the day, I would say, I think let's try to evict them or something. And if they don't, let's try to find an investor that will take it over. Because there's over 4 million people living in Phoenix, and it's a hot investment state. So many people own homes here that they never move here, but all their investments are here. Right. Now I know, just through reading through attorney contracts in Arizona forms, is we are a landlord-friendly state. We can evict that person, and if you're a personal representative watching this video, right, the easiest, cheapest defense, if you just opened a probate, was just go to the dollar store and get no trespassing signs. And if you can't afford to change the locks, at least put the signs up and take photos that there were signs, because that will stop tenants, as far as their legal right to stay in the home, that'll stop them in their tracks. And then you just go to the sheriff and have them evicted.
Wow.
If you don't, they become a tenant very quickly in this state. It's still a landlord-friendly state, but yeah, I would say 9 out of 10 times we can get them evicted. We can get them out of there. The attorney's not going to do that, and they shouldn't. It's not their job. It's not even my job, but we've done it so many times that's become easy.
So do you coordinate with eviction services or attorneys that do that specialty? And
Eviction services, and then just filing it with the sheriff, with the county sheriff, and they'll get.
Oh, you
the
do the
map.
filing. You do the filing yourself. Oh, wow.
Because a lot of times, if you're living in Michigan and you're the personal representative, you don't know even the website to go to for Arizona.
Right.
So I'll have them on the phone with me, and I'll just do a
Wow.
group call with the personal representative and go down. And they ask every time, does Sam have permission to speak on your behalf? Yep, he's my probate realtor, and so the first few times I had to have my hand held, and I learned it from working with people like you, or other probate realtors in Nevada, even in Tucson, in a different market of Arizona. I was lucky to find them, but at this point, it's made the job very easy.
Up until about 2 years ago, one of my main advantages was working with eviction attorneys and eviction services. And I hold Rolodex of those people, depending on where you were, the situation. I really had all that down to a science. And LA, California is not landlord friendly.
No, they're not landlord friendly.
We're landlord adverse.
Yeah.
We are. I think our state just wants to take the property and just give it to the tenants if they could. They're just doing it one law at a time, one regulation at a time. And so I live in LA County, in California. So you have a city that's landlord adverse, and a county that's landlord adverse, and a state that's landlord adverse. 3 layers of that. And to be honest, for the most part now, I tell customers, look, I'm fine help coordinating with your eviction attorney. I know the best eviction attorneys. I've interviewed on my podcast. I'll do whatever it takes to help, but I don't get to change the laws. And here's the problem. It takes like 2-3 years to get rid of them. Yeah. Now, sometimes investors don't know that, and because they did one 2 years ago, and they think it's a 6-month process. And I said, well, we have a case where we're selling the property with a $25,000 credit if they take the occupant in the property. It's not tenant, a little different situation. But like for $25,000, you're getting off cheap, and the customer said 100% we'll take it because they were an attorney. They knew the process. So we're in a whole different world there, bud. I'm glad to hear you doing that. And I think that's that gets down to being appropriate for your market and your customers, and being an expert in whatever that is. In your case, being an expert like I used to be on the eviction process. Today, it's really helping the customer avoid the eviction process and say, let's figure out ways to sell the property as is more effectively. That's become more my job, I think.
Why you said that was a big piece of your business. What has changed over just a couple of years for you?
Well, I think it's not me. It's the city and county and state are all marching to become more and more landlord vicious.
Oh, I see.
You have a case, for example, there's certain laws that start in one city and then it becomes a county and a state. Like in San Francisco, they're now charging for vacant property. So if you have a property and say, well, I want to rent it because it's, my kid's in college, he's going to graduate in 2 years, and maybe he'll want to live there, so we'll leave it vacant. We don't want to rent it because it's not worth it, and the risks and all that. The city of San Francisco will charge you for vacancy now for residential property.
Wow.
Statewide, we have an initiative. They're trying to put in the ballot for commercial property. If you don't rent it, if it's vacant. So one of my clients, I'm a broker of record for a commercial property management company. We try to sell property in a market where you have 190-day average marketing time for industrial property in downtown LA. That means you're vacant for 190 days on average if it's vacant.
Wow.
The city wants to charge us now for vacant property because they're saying, well, we're not collecting the revenue, so we need some way to pay for it. Well, we're not collecting anything. It's vacant.
Right.
So we live in a city and a county and a state that all are just committed to giving properties to the homeless people who've wandered here from around the world. And, politically, you can have a case about immigration and how to enforce the laws and all that. But what's not a question is we've made it very dangerous to keep a property vacant. And as a result, there are people who've lost, all the money they have. I had people think, oh, the landlord's wealthy. They're going to inherit. I had one case where they're going to inherit an $800,000 house. Mm-hmm. What they understand is that heir literally is in a nursing home, in some dumpy Medicaid nursing home, like for poor people, in some rural area of Virginia, because they didn't have access to the equity from the house. If they had $800,000, they could move to a nice adult facility, get nice care, be taken care of, get proper attention. But they can't because of the rich landlord, and the laws are designed to help the tenant who was just dealing drugs and prostitution and all kinds of crazy stuff. in this property. And the guy who died was a war veteran, decorated hero. And so he left this property for his wife, who couldn't get proper medical care because this tenant was in the property. Now, that case goes back 3 years and we got them evicted. But not so simple. It's just a whole... And I hate it. I hate telling people, I hate surrendering to the tenant. And when we sell the property, the tenant in there, in some cases, the buyer, beware, hey, we told you, and it's up to you to know. And you're an investor and you're sophisticated, good luck. But I still hate it because I know they're going to get screwed. I've had people like that call me 2 years later and say, hey, by the way, we never got that guy out. We're still struggling with it. It's just terrific.
Which circles back to, we call personal representatives when they open up, when they file to become personal representative of a probate case. And when I'm talking with them, I mean, the number one question is, they say that they have a family friend or someone up the road is a realtor. They're just going to use them. And I just ask if they're open-minded to, hearing what a probate realtor is, interviewing both of us and going with who you feel most confident.
Yeah.
They say, well, isn't it all the same? And it circles back to realtors agreeing to take on these things because they say, well, it's just selling a house. Sure, maybe.
It is until it isn't.
Yeah, when it is until it isn't. And then when it gets hard, you can't back out. You have to, the only way out is through.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that final thing, I thought this was a high level thing I learned only after doing it for a while, was that the attorneys, if they catch on that you don't know what you're doing and you've never gone through a probate and you don't even know how to define the word probate, and you're on the phone all the time with the attorney, you're emailing the attorney, asking them, what do I do now? Guess who's paying for that? Because they start charging it to the estate. So you're increasing the estate's bills, legal fees, at the same time as you're wandering. And you were just, probably had good intentions in the beginning. I'm the family realtor. I want to help. So we actually are able to, I just write down kind of some of the questions that the PR has. I talk to them weekly just to stay in touch. I'll write down the questions, and then the attorney usually asks every 2 weeks, I'd like an update. So when I call him, I rattle off the questions, I get all the answers, and I give it back to the PR, and none of that was billed. So what's the difference between someone who knows this business or doesn't? Is you can lower their legal fees or you can increase them. I thought that was interesting.
Boss, you're bringing the extra value too, right? The attorney who refers you now is not only not having to do the work they don't really want to do, and if they bill, they really don't want to bill for work they don't want to do. One thing I told my attorney is they don't want to bill for everything. They want to bill for what they want to bill for, and they don't want to do what they don't want to do. Sure. But if you're doing it, to them it's free. But the customer's enjoying the value from them for free. And I think that's where you extend the value of what you're talking about. For me, my business is more procedural, like to sell property court confirmation, you have to file a certain legal advertisement before is one of the stages. Well, I say to the attorney, if you'd like me to do it, I'll do it. If you want me to pay for it, I'll pay for it. And like that saves them time. I have one that the attorney said he did, and his paralegal is really not very good. They filed it with the court. And so rather than ask him for a copy of it, because I've asked him for it daily now for 3 days, now it's on the court records. I just download it. And now I have all the information I need. I can move forward. So I have to bother him back again. And he's going to say, do you still need it? No, I got it off the court records. There's no other realtor doing that, right? That's the difference between me. I saved his time instead of billing him. So I think that's the goal is if we can give more value to our customer for less cost, that's what business is about, right? You're creating more for your customer.
Yeah.
Well, look, I know we've got a little long here. Sammy, I really appreciate the chance to chat with you personally, and I know other people may be. If an attorney or a realtor in the area wants to work with you, refer you some business, or ask you questions, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, realtors aren't very hard to find. So I had Bill put up my phone number, my email. If you just Google me, you'll see that I work for the Cydia probate division, and that is basically just specializing in probate. So follow any of the links or the reviews or anything. But I'd love to interview, kind of hear what you're going through, and see if we can't help you get what you're wanting in the time you need it. We've gone through a lot of different situations, and then another huge source of my education is Bill and his podcast. Is you accelerate my growth by going through all of these situations I don't have to personally go through, and learn how you got through them. And then when I encounter them in real life, it feels like I've done it before. So,
well, likewise, it's great to learn about how business is done in Arizona, in the Grand Canyon State. And I really appreciate your time today and your success, continued success for you. And let's stay in touch going forward. Okay.
Absolutely, Bill. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And again, this is the Probate Weekly podcast. We get together every week with an attorney or a professional in business or a vendor to help us be more successful in helping our customers and create more value for them. We have a Facebook group where you can continue the conversation. If you have questions or referrals, or you're looking for referrals in different states with an attorney, realtor, or vendor, feel free to ask there. I'm your host, Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media. If you like this, please like it. If you have questions or suggestions, put it in the comment section. If I can help, please reach out anyway. And as always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.